A couple of months ago, I uploaded a video reacting to your best and worst Dead by Daylight hot takes. I asked you guys to leave some of your hot takes in the comments down below for me to go over and react to. So today we're going to be doing just that, and I'll be reacting to some of your DBD hot takes. As always, please feel free to leave more of your DBD hot takes in the comments down below of this video, and I'll be sure to react to some of them in the next DBD hot takes video that I do. But with that said, let's get straight onto the first hot take, which says how the hooks that they use in the 2v8 game mode should be the hooks that they use all the time. So I'm assuming they mean like just in the normal game modes, and how it puts a survivor in a new location when they camp the hook. I definitely do agree with the second part of this, where it should teleport you to a different location if the killer is too close to the hook for an extended period of time, because they did try adding an anti-camping mechanic and it hasn't really worked, because the killer can kind of still proxy camp the hook. He can still keep an eye on the hook, stay somewhat close by without being right next to it. And the way it works is, like, unless the killer is really close to the hook, like right next to it, the bar doesn't really go up quick enough to unhook yourself. So it doesn't really work. Not only that, but also if the survivor's nearby the area. So if the killer's like chasing a survivor or something, or there's a survivor nearby, or maybe a couple of survivors nearby, as well as the killer, the anti-camping bar will stop going up. So I don't know, it's just not really gone to plan. It's not really gone as they intended, I don't think. So I'd definitely be on board with the second part of this, where if a killer is too close to the hook for an extended period of time, then they get teleported over to a new location. I'd definitely be on board with that, although I'm not too sure about the first part of that, where like the killers can just send them to the hook, like how it was on 2v8, kind of similar to what it is with Pyramid Head. If they did do that, it would create a ton of problems. Like, for example, perks like Breakout and Boil Over would need to be completely reworked. They wouldn't work anymore if the killer doesn't have to pick up the survivor and like carry them over to a hook. So I definitely think that part of it would, I don't know, I wouldn't be completely against it as long as it was exactly how it was on 2v8 with the second part of it as well, the new location if the killer stays too close to the hook. But like I said, I wouldn't be completely on board with the first part of this, where the killer can just immediately send you to the hook. Like I said, it would create a lot of problems. You wouldn't be able to sabotage hooks anymore. Hooks like Boil Over, Breakout and stuff, like I said, they wouldn't really work. They'd have to be well, they wouldn't work at all. They'd have to be completely reworked. But yeah, interesting idea. Also, on the topic of 2v8 is coming back soon, isn't it? So that's something to look forward to. But yeah, moving on to our next hot take, which says that Smash Hit is the best exhaustion perk to use, because if the killer realizes you have this, you can play more greedy with pallets. And yeah, I definitely agree. I wouldn't agree that it's the best exhaustion perk. I think there's definitely better exhaustion perks out there, such as Sprint Burst. I do think Sprint Burst is the best. Dead Hard, I still think, is a decent one. Balanced Landing. Even Lithe, I'm not really a big fan of Lithe, but it is a really strong exhaustion perk. I personally don't like it because it forces you away from loops, but it is still one of the better exhaustion perks in the game. Smash Hit, though, definitely has a lot of benefits. For example, it only has a 20-second cooldown. I think Background Player only has a 20-second cooldown as well, but Smash Hit is a lot better than Background Player. Background Player doesn't really activate in Chase. It's mainly just for getting flashlight saves or maybe Sabo saves as well. But yeah, I do agree Smash Hit is really good. It can work well in combination with other exhaustion perks as well. For example, I like to use Smash Hit with Balanced Landing or Dead Hard. Since it does only have that 20-second cooldown, it means you can get your exhaustion back much quicker, especially if you're using the perk Vigil. Then you can get it back in just 14 seconds, which is crazy. But yeah, a lot of people say that it's a downside that killers start respecting pallets more once they realize you've got it. I definitely agree with this hot take, though. It is definitely a positive. You can start greeting pallets more and getting extra loops in. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't say it's the best exhaustion perk, but I do agree it is a really good one. I'd probably say it's an underrated one as well. It's one that not many people use. And another thing as well, not only does it have the 20-second cooldown, it also gives you a 4-second speed boost rather than just 3, which is the standard for the other perks, such as Lithe and Sprint Burst, for example. But yeah, overall, I'd agree with this one. Smash Hit is definitely a good exhaustion perk. The next hot take says how Haddonfield is the worst map in the game, barely any pallets and not very good windows. But I guess it's more balanced than how it was before with the old Haddonfield. I definitely agree with this comment, but I don't think it's a hot take. I think most people would agree that Haddonfield is one of the worst maps in the game. Like you say, it did used to be really problematic, especially with the old Balanced Landing. I was like really new to the game back then. I remember playing like a little bit on console. And I remember if I played Killer on the old Haddonfield, it seemed like every time the survivors would have Balanced Landing, and the reduced stagger would still activate if you were exhausted, so it would create like pretty much infinites. So I'm assuming that's the reason it got changed. But yeah, definitely agree. It is one of the worst maps in the game. And they changed it recently as well. There was like 2 really good windows that you'd have in the 2 buildings on either side of the map. They took them away. I think you've still got 1 window, but then you've got like a really weak palette as well now. So they made it even worse than what it was. For me, it's a map that I have bad games on for both Killer and Survivor. I struggle looping on it as Survivor because, like you say, there's not really many loops. But yeah, overall, definitely agree with this. I don't think it's a hot take. I think most people would agree it is one of the worst maps in the game. The next hot take says how the game is very killer-sided, and this comes from someone who mainly plays Dem, so I'm assuming that's Demogorgon. How unfair the game is depends on how sweaty you are. but even with no gen regression or tunneling, you can win about half your games. I think the game can be killer-sided. I don't necessarily think it is all the time. I don't think it's that simple whether the game's just killer or survivor sided. I think it depends on a ton of different variables, such as, is it solo queue or is it a swift? Is it a 2-man swift or a 3-man swift? Maybe even a 4-man swift. It depends on what the map is. It depends on who the killer is. It depends on the perks being used. It depends on the experience of the players. I mean, maybe the killer's only got 1,000 hours going up against a 4,000 hour swift. Obviously, in that case, it's survivor sided. But then if you are a 4-man swift, say you've all got 1,000 hours in the game, but you're going up against a nurse with 10,000 hours in the game. So I think it can be killer sided. I think it can be survivor sided. I think it just depends. Like I say, there's so many different variables to take into consideration. So yeah, I think it can be killer sided, but not always. I think it can be survivor sided as well. The next hot take says how Dredge is 100% better than people say. His anti-loop is a lot better than people say. Locker RNG can hinder him, but if you know how to get enough value from the Remnant TP, it's not that bad at all. Does not deserve the disrespect that is high C tier to B tier. I'm definitely no expert on Dredge, so I'm not 100% sure whether I disagree or agree with this. I would probably somewhat agree. I do think he's better than people say, and you also don't really see him a whole lot, and I do think he is a decent killer. He also got a buff recently, so he's a little bit better. I think it was a buff anyway. I'm pretty sure it was a buff that he got recently, so he's even better than he was beforehand. I'm pretty sure when this comment was posted, it was before the Dredge buff. So yeah, he's also even better than he was when this comment was posted. I think his Nightfall is like extremely strong as well, especially if you're in solo queue, so you don't really know exactly where he is. You're not on comms with anyone. In a 4-man swift, it could be a different story. You can communicate a lot better whereabouts he is. Also, Windows of Opportunity is a perk that works amazing against his Nightfall. But yeah, the Nightfall, especially without Windows, it can be really difficult to play against as a survivor, especially in solo queue. I do agree he's got decent anti-loop as well, but again, it depends on the loop that you're at. Sometimes it can turn into a 50-50 as well. It's kind of like a guessing game whether he's going to teleport back to the Remnant or not. But even still, after the buff, he's still not a killer you'll really see him much. At least I'm not seeing him much in my experience anyway. I mean, you guys can let me know in the comments down below if you do see a lot of Dredge, but I've definitely not seen many of him at all. I've probably seen like maybe 1 or 2 since he got buffed. So yeah, overall, I probably agree with this. He's probably better than what people say. And like I said, because I'm not seeing him much as well, I do think he is a little bit underrated. But moving on to the next hot take, and this reads, as both killer and survivor, every indoor map is miserable to play in. I can't stand playing killer on an indoor map. So I disagree with this one because I play a lot of stealth killers, and even when I don't play stealth killers, say I'm playing Leatherface for example, I like to use perks like Tinkerer just to add like an element of stealth. So the indoor maps for me as killer, especially Larry's, I really do enjoy. I actually really enjoy Larry's on Survivor as well. I think it's got some pretty good loops, especially around the main room with the 2 windows that you can get. I think it does depend on the killer that you're playing as though. If you're playing someone like Hillbilly, Huntress, or Nurse or something, you're going to struggle on the indoor maps. You know, maybe not Midwich, maybe Nurse or Huntress could have a decent time on Midwich actually because of the long corridors. But something like Larry's, yeah, be a tough map depending on the killer that you're playing. I think for stealth killers though, the indoor maps are amazing. I do also enjoy playing Survivor on Midwich. I know a lot of people hate Midwich, but I actually like it. I think there's a lot of decent loops. There's definitely a lack of god palettes, but there's a lot of good loops and a few good windows on it as well. And with it being like a 2-story map, you can use balanced landing. You guys know that I love using balanced landing. It is my favorite exhaustion perk to use right now. So yeah, overall I would disagree with this, but depending on the killer you're playing, I can definitely understand why you wouldn't like playing on it. And I can understand why you wouldn't like playing Survivor on the indoor maps as well. A lot of the indoor maps can be tough for Survivor, especially RPD. RPD is a map I've said before, but I really hate RPD. I think it's my least favorite map in the game, or definitely one of my least favorite maps in the game anyway. The next hot take is all about Freddy, and it says how Freddy needs a rework. I'm well aware this isn't much of a hot take, but how do you feel about a dream object as his power, and then in brackets, gens, palettes, and windows? Freddy should be really scary. I mean, he sends you to another world. Well, we do have the dream palette add-on. I think that's what you mean. So like, it'll be like an illusion generator on an illusion palette and window, like you say. We do have the dream palettes that you can bring with an add-on, but other than that, yeah, gens and windows, we don't have anything like that. I'm pretty sure Freddy is getting a rework at some point in the future. This has been rumored for a long time now, though nothing has materialized from it as of yet, but I'm pretty sure we're meant to be getting a Freddy rework in the future. I definitely agree as well. He definitely does need a rework. He's just kind of been like bottom tier for a long time now, or if not bottom tier, very close to bottom tier. Easily one of the worst killers in the game in my opinion. And he used to be one of the better killers in the game as well. I remember when they first reworked him in like late 2019, I think it was, early 2020 maybe. Around the time I switched to PC anyway, I remember him being really strong. You had like the Forever Freddy build with the gen slowdown. I think that's obviously too strong though. He shouldn't be as strong as he was back then. But yeah, Freddy's a killer he's kind of been at all ends of the tier list, hasn't he? He's been like the worst killer in the game by far when he was first added into the game, where you had to like drag them into the dream world before you could injure them and then down them. Then they buffed him and he was one of the better killers in the game with the Forever Freddy Freddy gen slowdown thing that he had. But since then, they've just nerfed him over and over, and now he's one of the worst again. So yeah, I definitely agree, and I think a rework is coming as well. I heard a lot about a Freddy rework in the past. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is in the works. I think we are getting it eventually. The next hot take says that I'm More Layers is one of the most useful anti-looping perks, better than the likes of Bamboozle and Save the Best for Last. I think it depends on the killer that you're playing as. For example, someone like Pyramid Head would definitely benefit from I'm More Layers more than Bamboozle or Save the Best for Last. But if you're playing someone like Leatherface or maybe Hillbilly, for example, then yeah, Bamboozle is going to be a much better choice. It's also a perk that got buffed recently. I'm actually not sure if this comment was posted before or after it got buffed. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure, but yeah, either way, I definitely think it is a good anti-looping perk, depending on the killer that you're playing as. Like I said, someone like Pyramid Head can really benefit from it, but then other killers, like I say, will benefit more from Bamboozle, so I think it just depends on the killer that you're currently playing as. But definitely a decent perk overall, definitely underrated, and one that is stronger than it used to be as well. It does have a shorter cooldown than it used to now, since it did get buffed. The next hot take says how legendary skin characters should get cosmetics. I definitely agree with this. I would love like different cosmetics for legendary skins such as Lisa or Chris from Resident Evil, for example. I think this is something they are starting to do as well, because in the most recent Rift, we got a new skin added, like a Castlevania legendary skin, which was Summer from obviously from the Castlevania series. And he does have a recolor on the Rift, so there's two different skins that you can get. They do look pretty similar, but they are different. Like I said, there is a recolor that you can also get. So maybe this is something they'll start doing a lot more in the future. I think it would also be cool if we could put like the blood from the Prestige onto legendary skins. I think that would be amazing as well. But yeah, overall, definitely agree with this. This is definitely something they should do a lot more of. The next hot take says how Spirit's nerf was a good thing, because now all survivors have a chance against her, not just super cracked veteran players. Before a nerf, she was extremely oppressive, and even mid-level players and teams didn't really stand a chance against her if the killer was even modestly good with her. They also say how they play Spirit themselves and feel less bullyish against less skilled players now. Before the nerf, it was a nurse level butcher shop against these type of players and teams. So yeah, I'm assuming you mean like way back, like 2021, kind of maybe 2020, 2021. I remember during the Rune and Dying meta, Spirit was arguably the strongest in the game. Like she was arguably on par or maybe even better than Nurse. This was back before Strider got nerfed, and it would like fully counter Iron Will. This was when Iron Will was meta as well. If the Spirits had Strider, which they always would, it would somewhat counter Iron Will. And yeah, I definitely agree. Spirit back then was just insanely strong, way too strong, on par or if not even better than Nurse in some cases. Like it was crazy how strong she was. They've nerfed her I think a couple of times since then. She's definitely still decent, but she's nowhere near as strong as she was back then. And yeah, I do agree, it was definitely a good thing overall. So moving on to our next and final hot take, and this says how Dramaturgy is a really underrated exhaustion perk, being sort of like a mini on-demand sprint burst, and being able to give you pretty broken add-ons like syringes and brand new parts if you're lucky enough. And even when or if you do get exposed, a good survivor can play safely until it wears off. Yeah, I do agree. It is underrated. It is a decent perk. I actually used to hate it at first. I used it a couple of times recently, and I'm definitely enjoying it a lot more. I had it a few times in Chaos Shuffle as well, and like I said, it was really fun. It was really enjoyable to use. Pretty decent as well. I do agree it is underrated. It's a perk you never really see used. Like you said, the only downside is when you do get exposed. But yeah, I do agree. It is only for like 12 seconds or something like that. It is a really short period of time, so unless you're like completely out in the open, you should be fine. Another thing with the exposed effect as well is the killers don't know when you're exposed. If they're really paying attention and know that you've got Dramaturgy, they could kind of figure it out, but they would have to really be paying attention for that. They'd have to make sure you didn't get an item, make sure you didn't scream, make sure you didn't get another speed boost. And like I said, it is only a few seconds, so I do agree. If you're exposed, you should be fine for the most part. Definitely the best thing you can get is the additional speed boost. Then yeah, it is definitely like having a mini sprint burst on demand. But yeah, overall, I would agree Dramaturgy is pretty underrated. It's a perk I almost never see in game. I pretty much never see anyone using Dramaturgy. But yeah, it can be decent for farming items, and just a really fun exhaustion perk, I would say. Really fun and unpredictable exhaustion perk. But I never used to be, but I am a big fan of Dramaturgy now. I've been enjoying it a lot more recently. So that brings us to the end of the video. Hope you guys have enjoyed it today. Like I said, please be sure to leave your hot takes down below in the comments, and I'll be sure to react to them in the next hot takes video that we do. Maybe we could start doing like a hot takes video once per month or something like that. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Hope you all have enjoyed it, and as always, I will see you all in the next one.